In 1976, Logan's Run imagined a flawless future where youth meant survival and aging meant death. But that nightmare followed the cast off-screen. Divorces, devastating illnesses, vanished careers, and silent deaths rewrote their lives. Let's uncover what really happened and honor the legacies they left behind. Michael York as Logan. Michael York was born on March 27, 1942, in Fulmer, Buckinghamshire, England. At 34 years old, he played Logan 5, the elite sandman who begins to doubt and flee a controlled futuristic society in Logan's Run, 1976. That role anchored the film's tension, turning a polished science fiction world into a story driven by fear and moral collapse. That inner conflict did not appear by accident. York grew up in a household shaped by authority and expectation, with a Welsh former British Army officer as a father and a musically trained mother. Education and restraint defined his early years, pushing him toward intellectual achievement at Oxford while quietly suppressing emotional expression. This background later surfaced in his performances, including Romeo and Juliet, 1968. Stability arrived through marriage, but it came with sacrifice. York married photographer Patricia McCallum in 1968, and their long partnership became a constant as his career accelerated through demanding projects like Cabaret, 1972, and Murder on the Orient Express, 1974. However, the pressure to sustain prestige roles placed strain on private life, making his marriage both an anchor and a silent shield. That shield cracked years later. In 2013, York was diagnosed with amyloidosis, a rare and progressive disease that altered his voice, facial features, and stamina. Treatment required stem cell therapy and long periods away from public life. Today, Michael York is 84 years old and lives quietly while making only occasional appearances connected to voice work and legacy events. With an estimated net worth of around $14 million, his later life reflects survival rather than spectacle. Jenny Agutter. As Jessica. Jenny Agutter was born on December 20, 1952, in Taunton, Somerset, England. At 24 years old, she played Jessica 6, the woman who abandons artificial pleasure to seek real freedom in Logan's Run, 1976. Her performance gave the film emotional credibility, transforming rebellion into something intimate and human. That emotional depth traced back to a childhood defined by movement. As the daughter of a British Army officer, Agutter relocated repeatedly between countries, learning early how to adapt while carrying a persistent sense of instability. Ballet training imposed physical rigor and emotional pressure, shaping a performer who appeared fragile on screen, yet endured demanding roles like Walkabout, 1971. Marriage later offered grounding. In 1990, Agutter married Swedish hotelier Johan Tham, choosing family life over relentless Hollywood momentum. During this period, she balanced select roles such as Equus, 1977, with a gradual shift toward British television, building a quieter but steadier career that prioritized longevity over exposure. That stability collapsed with loss. Tom's death in 2025 marked a profound rupture after more than 3 decades together, leaving Agutter to confront grief away from the spotlight. The loss echoed through her later performances, deepening the emotional weight she brought to long-running work like Call the Midwife. Now, Jenny Agutter is 73 years old and remains active through selective acting and sustained charitable work, particularly in support of cystic fibrosis causes. With an estimated net worth of $8 million, she lives without spectacle, shaped by endurance rather than fame. Richard Jordan as Francis. Richard Jordan was born on July 19, 1937, in New York City, United States. At 39 years old, he played Francis 7, the relentless Sandman and Logan's closest friend turned pursuer in Logan's Run, 1976. His cold intensity gave the film its most frightening human edge. That intensity was shaped early. Jordan grew up in New York surrounded by theater culture, but artistic ambition came with financial strain and emotional pressure. Raised after his parents' divorce, he learned quickly that talent alone was not enough to survive. Those formative years pushed him toward discipline and control, traits later visible in his stage work and early screen performances alongside actors like Burt Lancaster in The Yakuza and Robert Mitchum in The Friends of Eddie Coyle. As his career expanded, personal stability slipped. Jordan married actress Kathleen Widdows, with whom he had a daughter, Nina, but the marriage ended in divorce. He later entered a long relationship with actress Blair Brown, resulting in the birth of his son. Yet that bond also fractured under the weight of demanding schedules and emotional distance. During this period, he balanced prestige roles in projects such as Captains and the Kings, which earned him a Golden Globe, with mounting personal isolation. His health collapse came suddenly and brutally. In early 1993, Jordan was diagnosed with a brain tumor, a condition that advanced rapidly and left little room for recovery. Forced to withdraw from ongoing projects, including The Fugitive, he continued working as long as possible, completing performances that revealed a man pushing against time rather than surrendering to it. Finally, he died on August 30th, 1993, at 56 years old from complications caused by the brain tumor. He passed away at home, cared for by his daughter and partner Marcia Cross, just weeks before the release of Gettysburg, his final film. With an estimated net worth of $5 million, Jordan left behind a legacy defined not by longevity, but by intensity, an actor who burned fiercely and vanished far too soon. Farrah Fawcett as Holly. Farrah Fawcett was born on February 2, 1947, in Corpus Christi, Texas, United States. At 29 years old, she played Holly, a beautiful but hollow symbol of pleasure and conformity in Logan's Run, 1976. Though brief, her presence reinforced the film's warning about a society that mistakes desire for freedom. Her childhood offered comfort but carried quiet pressure. Growing up in Texas with striking beauty, Fawcett became aware early that appearance shaped expectation. Praise came easily, but it trained her to equate worth with image. That tension followed her into adulthood, even as she transitioned from commercials to television roles that emphasized looks over depth. Marriage and fame collided violently. Fawcett married actor Lee Majors in 1973, just as her career exploded with Charlie's Angels. The success made her a global icon, but also trapped her in a sexualized image she struggled to escape. Their marriage ended in divorce, followed by a turbulent relationship with Ryan O'Neal, marked by emotional conflict and public scrutiny, even as she fought for respect through dramatic performances like The Burning Bed. That fight took a devastating turn with illness. In 2006, Fawcett was diagnosed with anal cancer, beginning a long and painful battle involving surgery, chemotherapy, and experimental treatment abroad. She chose to document the process in Farrah's story, exposing the physical and emotional toll of the disease with raw honesty as her condition worsened. Sadly, she died on June 25, 2009, at 62 years old at 9:28 a.m., after the cancer spread despite years of treatment. She was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles. With an estimated net worth of $25 million, her legacy endures not as a poster on a wall, but as a woman who challenged the image that made her famous and revealed the cost behind it. Roscoe Lee Browne as Box. Roscoe Lee Browne was born on May 2, 1922, in Woodbury, New Jersey, United States. At 54 years old, he played Box, the blind, frozen survivor guarding a forbidden world of memory and decay in Logan's Run, 1976. His performance gave the film one of its most unsettling moments. That gravity was forged early in life. Raised as the son of a Baptist minister, Browne grew up in a household where words mattered and expectations were heavy. He was brilliant, disciplined, and athletically gifted, yet constantly confronted by racial barriers that narrowed opportunity no matter how exceptional his achievements were. He pursued higher education relentlessly, served in the military, taught literature, and only later turned fully toward acting. That tension forged the intellectual gravity he brought to stage work with the New York Shakespeare Festival and films like The Cowboys. Browne's personal life followed an unconventional path. He never married and had no children, choosing independence over domestic stability in a profession that often rewarded conformity. As his career expanded through television successes like Soap, guest roles across major series, and his distinctive narration work, from Star Wars story albums to the worldwide hit Babe, he remained fiercely private. He refused demeaning stereotypes even when they promised faster fame, a decision that protected his dignity but also kept him isolated from Hollywood's inner circles. Illness arrived quietly, without drama or publicity. In his later years, Browne was diagnosed with stomach cancer, a disease that advanced painfully and steadily. The condition drained his physical strength and gradually pulled him away from the stage, the classroom, and the microphone. Roscoe Lee Browne died on April 11, 2007, at 84 years old, from complications related to stomach cancer. He passed away in Los Angeles. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, Browne left no dynasty, no scandal, and no mythology. Peter Ustinov as Old Man. Peter Ustinov was born on April 16, 1921, in London, England. At 55 years old, he played the Old Man, the last free historian of a forgotten civilization in Logan's Run, 1976. His role anchored the film's moral center, proving that memory itself could be an act of rebellion. That wisdom was earned through emotional unrest. Ustinov's childhood was marked by constant conflict between his parents, leaving him anxious, observant, and prematurely reflective. Books, performance, and storytelling became refuge, leading him toward acting as a means of escape. These inner tensions later fueled his commanding presence in films like Quo Vadis and Spartacus. His personal life was equally complex. Ustinov married 3 times, first to Isolde Denham, then to Suzanne Cloutier, and finally to Hélène Dulot d'Allemand, with each relationship shaped by distance, demanding careers, and eventual separation or loss. While his professional life flourished through projects such as Death on the Nile and his work as Hercule Poirot, his marriages carried emotional cost, reinforcing a pattern of brilliance paired with instability. Health challenges emerged quietly but persistently. Ustinov lived with diabetes and chronic heart disease, conditions that gradually weakened him while he continued writing, acting, and serving as a UNICEF Goodwill ambassador. The strain of decades of work, travel, and responsibility took its toll, narrowing his physical world even as his intellectual voice remained strong. Sadly, he died on March 28, 2004, at 82 years old, from heart failure at a clinic near his home in Switzerland. With an estimated net worth of around $10 million, Ustinov's legacy endures not in wealth, but in memory, much like the old man he portrayed, a guardian of truth in a world eager to forget. Michael Anderson, Jr. as Doc. Michael Anderson, Jr. was born on August 6, 1943, in Hillingdon, England. At 33 years old, he appeared as Doc, the anxious medical technician caught between obedience and doubt in Logan's Run, 1976. His performance carried quiet tension, the look of a man who knows the system is wrong but lacks the power to stop it. Growing up inside an artistic household was both a gift and a burden. As the son of director Michael Anderson, expectations followed him from childhood. Trained in drama and ballet and already performing on radio and television by age 8, Anderson Jr. faced the classic struggle of a former child star, shedding youthful promise and proving himself as an adult actor. Early successes like The Sundowners and the TV Western. The Monroes brought visibility, but also pressure to escape his father's shadow. His personal life reflected that instability. Anderson married 3 times, beginning with Victoria Harrington in 1966, a marriage that ended in divorce after 7 difficult years. Subsequent marriages also failed, each separation adding emotional weight rather than closure. The death of his father from heart disease further deepened that strain, closing a chapter defined by admiration, pressure, and unresolved identity. Behind the scenes, the cost of a life shaped by expectations became impossible to ignore. By the late 1990s, Anderson chose retreat over reinvention. He retired from acting in 1998, became a naturalized U.S. citizen, and stepped fully away from the spotlight that had followed him since childhood. In 2026, Michael Anderson Jr. is 82 years old, living a private life far removed from Hollywood. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, his story is not one of stardom or scandal, but of quiet endurance. Gary Morgan as Billy. Gary Morgan was born on January 2, 1950, in New Jersey, USA. At just 26 years old, he played Billy, one of the younger runners struggling to survive a world with an expiration date in Logan's Run. His physicality and nervous energy made the character feel painfully real. Performance was never optional for Morgan. Raised by vaudeville parents, he was on stage almost as soon as he could walk, juggling school with relentless rehearsal schedules. That early exposure built discipline, but also exhaustion. By adulthood, Morgan faced a hard truth. His stature limited leading man roles. Rather than fade away, he pivoted, transforming himself into a respected stunt performer, accepting real physical risk where fame was uncertain. This shift came at a cost. Stunt work meant injuries, instability, and long gaps between recognition. Yet it also gave him longevity. Films like Pete's Dragon, and later stunt work on productions such as Batman Forever, kept him working when many former child actors disappeared entirely. Where others burned out, Morgan adapted. Unlike many Hollywood stories, his personal life offered stability. Married to Susie Madigan since 1973, he built a long, steady family life and raised 2 children, including daughter Bonnie Morgan, who followed a physical performance path of her own. Now, Gary Morgan is 76 years old. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, his career stands as a quiet victory, proof that survival in Hollywood sometimes means knowing when to change direction and having the courage to do it. Randolph Roberts as Second Sanctuary Man. Randolph Roberts was born on October 5, 1947, in Fresno, California, USA. At 29 years old, he appeared as Second Sanctuary Man, one of the guarded survivors hiding beyond the system in Logan's Run. Though brief, the role sharpened the film's tension by showing that escape did not guarantee safety, only uncertainty. That quiet unease began early. Roberts grew up in California without widely documented hardship, yet the pressure to define himself in a crowded industry was constant. Early screen work in Wicked Wicked, 1973, and television appearances like Happy Days placed him in the public eye, but the competition was relentless and the margin for error thin. Marriage never became a stabilizing anchor in his public story, and his personal life remained largely private. Professionally, the emotional weight came from repetition. Auditions, short arcs, sudden write-offs. His turn as Chuck Cunningham on Happy Days made him part of television history, then erased him just as quickly. The real strain arrived with reinvention. By the late 1980s, Roberts stepped away from acting and entered education, becoming a supervisor at ITT Technical Institute. The transition brought financial steadiness, but emotional whiplash, trading cameras for classrooms after years of chasing visibility. Today, Randolph Roberts is 78 years old, living outside Hollywood's glare. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his story feels unsettlingly familiar. Remembered forever for a few frames on screen, then forced to rebuild a life when the spotlight moved on. Lara Lindsay as the Woman Runner. Lara Lindsay was born on January 1, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois, USA. At 34 years old, she appeared as the Woman Runner, a fleeting yet haunting figure in Logan's Run. The role carried quiet finality, her last appearance on screen, and a silent goodbye to Hollywood. That ending echoed a demanding beginning. As a child, Lindsay trained relentlessly as a professional ice skater, performing in ice capades under punishing schedules. The discipline forged toughness, but left little room for rest. Transitioning to film after skating required reinvention, and early roles like the Boston Strangler hinted at promise while never fully opening the door. Marriage offered hope, then fracture. Lindsay married Franz George Lewis in 1962, welcomed a son, and divorced just 5 years later. A later marriage to Howard Philip Ladd brought stability late in life, but the emotional scars of abandonment by the studio system lingered, especially after Fox's star-building program quietly let her go. The deeper wound was professional silence. After Logan's Run, she left acting entirely, moving behind the scenes and working closely with producer Saul David. There were no comeback arcs, no second acts. Sadly, she passed away on January 17, 2023, at 81 years old in California, from undisclosed causes. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, she was laid to rest quietly. Her legacy is unsettling in its simplicity. A life of discipline, a career cut short, and a final role that now feels like a prophecy, running, disappearing, and never returning. Ashley Cox as Timid Girl. Ashley Cox was born on November 15, 1956 in Dallas, Texas, USA. At 19 years old, she played Timid Girl, a frightened, vulnerable young woman inside the domed society in Logan's Run. The role, though brief, mirrored the film's central fear: innocence crushed by a system that allowed no weakness. That tension followed her from childhood. Growing up in Texas, Ashley was pushed into modeling at an early age, learning quickly that beauty came with pressure and constant judgment. Entering Hollywood as a teenager, she drifted between acting and image-driven work, appearing in Drive-In, 1976, and later Night Shift, 1982. Yet never fully escaping the industry's fixation on her looks rather than her voice. Her personal life became even more complicated through fame-adjacent relationships. Ashley was romantically involved with Hugh Hefner, becoming one of his personal playmates, a label that brought visibility but also emotional imbalance. She later married Gregory Lee Gardner, and after divorce, married Billy Glendale Barbee in 1991, relationships marked by instability and the quiet strain of being constantly defined by a past she could not erase. Besides, being branded a fantasy figure limited serious opportunities, and Ashley gradually stepped away from acting, choosing distance over further exposure as Hollywood's attention faded. Now, Ashley Cox is 69 years old, living far from the spotlight. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, her life stands as a quiet reversal of her early fame, proof that surviving Hollywood sometimes means walking away from it. Michelle Stacy as Mary. 2. Michelle Stacy was born on February 22, 1968, in Los Angeles, California, USA. At just 8 years old, she appeared as Mary 2, a child inside the controlled world of Logan's Run. Her presence underscored the film's most disturbing idea. Even children were not spared from the system's cold design. That burden began early. Michelle entered acting as a small child, working continuously through television and film, where discipline replaced play. Roles in Day of the Animals, 1977, and Demon Seed, 1977, demanded emotional depth well beyond her years, conditioning her to perform vulnerability on command. Her career reached a peak when she voiced Penny in Disney's The Rescuers, 1977, a role that made her instantly recognizable to an entire generation. Yet the pressure of constant work, long hours, and adult expectations closed in quickly. After appearances in shows like The Waltons and The Incredible Hulk, she quietly chose to leave acting around 1980 while still a child. Now, Michelle Stacy is 58 years old, married to Danny Darrell Northern and raising a family of 5 children, with an estimated net worth of about $500,000. Her story feels unsettling in retrospect. A gifted child who vanished from the screen by choice, leaving behind only echoes of a voice that once carried an entire animated world. Camila Carr as Sanctuary Woman. Camila Carr was born on September 17, 1942, in Chillicothe, Texas, USA. At 34 years old, she played Sanctuary Woman, a survivor living beyond the domed world in Logan's Run. Though her screen time was limited, the role quietly embodied the film's most unsettling promise. Freedom existed, but it came with loss, age, and memory. That quiet gravity was rooted in her early life. Raised in Texas and later educated at the University of North Texas, Camila pursued the arts against practical resistance and financial uncertainty. Acting was never guaranteed, and early work such as Don't Look in the Basement, 1973, showed her willingness to take risks long before mainstream recognition arrived. Her personal life carried similar fractures. In 1979, she married Edward Anhalt, a relationship that eventually ended in divorce and left her raising one child while balancing creative ambition. During this period, she shifted between acting and writing, appearing on Designing Women while simultaneously carving out a second identity behind the scenes. Illness would later eclipse everything else. In her final years, Camila suffered from Alzheimer's disease, a slow and devastating erosion of memory that cruelly contrasted with her life as a storyteller. Complications worsened after a hip dislocation, accelerating her physical decline and confining her world as her mind slipped further away. Camila Carr passed away on February 4, 2026, at 83 years old, in Texas, due to complications from Alzheimer's disease. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, her legacy rests less in wealth than in words. 3 Dramalogue Awards, a body of acclaimed stage writing, and a final on-screen role that now feels painfully symbolic. A woman who escaped the system, only to lose herself to time. Time changed every face from Logan's Run, 1976. Some found quiet peace, others faced loss, illness, or lives far from the spotlight. Looking back now, which cast member's journey shocked you the most, and whose fate stayed with you long after the credits rolled? If you enjoyed this deep dive into then and now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and tell us in the comments which classic film you want us to revisit next. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.